Mathematics is the language in which God has written the universe. Galileo Galilei. If the heavens are a clock and the zodiac is the face, then what is the language behind the clock itself? Numbers, shapes, ratios, geometry, the hidden order beneath the visible world. In the last episodes, we looked upward. We followed the great year, the zodiac, the ages. We also explored the idea that time does not move in a straight line, but in cycles, a spiral, a living rhythm written into the heavens. But now the story moves from the sky to the structure behind the sky. Because if the ancients were tracking cosmic time, then they were not only watching stars, they were reading patterns. And patterns have a language. That language is number. This matters because in the next episode, we're going to stand before one of the most mysterious monuments on Earth, the Great Pyramid of Giza. The second narrative tells us it was a tomb, a royal monument, a structure built for a pharaoh during Egypt's Old Kingdom. And maybe that is part of the story. But the deeper you look, the harder it becomes to believe that it's a tomb explains everything. The Great Pyramid is not merely large, it is precise, aligned, built with mathematical intelligence that still forces us to ask questions. So before we decode the pyramid, we have to learn the language it may have been written in. Because if the pyramid is a message, then numbers are the alphabet. And to understand the alphabet, we have to begin with one of the most important figures in the ancient world, Pythagoras. Welcome back to the third narrative. If you went through public school like I did, you were probably taught that numbers are tools. They help you count, measure, calculate, pass a test, pay bills, solve problems. But in the ancient world, numbers were not only practical, they were sacred. Numbers were understood as patterns of creation, living principles, the hidden architecture behind nature, geometry, music, time, and the human soul. To the ancients, the universe was not random, it was ordered. And that order could be read through numbers, through ratios, through harmony, through form. This is where Pythagoras becomes important. Most people know him from the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That is the version we were given in school. But Pythagoras was not merely a mathematician. He was remembered as a philosopher, a mystic, an initiate, a teacher who founded a school where mathematics, music, ethics, astronomy, and spiritual discipline were all part of one system. Ancient traditions say he traveled widely, including to Egypt, where he encountered older streams of wisdom.
It is reasonably certain, however, that Pythagoras, who had been initiated in the Egyptian temples, when he promulgated the doctrine of metempsychosis, restated, in part at least, the teachings of the Egyptian initiates.
Now, whether every detail of those stories is historically certain is not the point. The point is that Pythagoras stands at a crossroads between Egypt and Greece, between mystery schools and philosophy, between the ancient world and the Western mind. Through him, a hidden current became visible, a worldview where numbers were not dead abstractions. Numbers were divine law, the scaffolding of creation itself. And if we want to understand the pyramids, sacred geometry, the music of spheres, and the architecture of the gods, we need to understand this worldview. Do not worry about memorizing every number. That is not the point. The point is to see the pattern. Because once the pattern appears, the pyramid will no longer look like a pile of stones. It will look like a sentence, a code written in form. In Pythagorean thought, the number 1 was known as the monad, but it was not treated as an ordinary number. It was the source of numbers, the origin, the undivided whole, the one from which everything else emerges. Its simplest symbol is a point inside a circle. The point is the center. The circle is the infinite boundary. Together, they represent unity before division, before form, before movement, before creation separates into parts. In many traditions, this is the closest number comes to God, not God as a man in the clouds, but God as source, the silent unity behind existence. The monad is the idea that beneath multiplicity, there is one origin, one field, one consciousness, one hidden order. Everything begins there, but unity alone does not create a world. For creation to appear, unity must divide, and that brings us to 2. The number 2 is the Dyad. This is the first division. The moment unity becomes polarity, light and dark, male and female, heaven and earth, spirit and matter. We have seen this pattern throughout the series. The sun and the moon, the 2 serpents, the split between ascent and inversion. The dyad is not evil. Duality is not a mistake. It is the condition that allows creation to move. Without 2, there is no relationship, no tension, no reflection, no choice, no motion. In geometry, this can be imagined as 2 circles overlapping, creating the Vesica Pisces, 2 worlds crossing. And in the space between them, something new appears. This is the mystery of duality. Opposites create tension, but tension can become life. The problem is not that duality exists. The problem is when duality loses harmony. That is why 2 needs 3. The number 3 is the Triad. If 1 is unity and 2 is division, then 3 is reconciliation. The third point that allows tension to become structure. 2 points create a line, but 3 points create form. The triangle, the first stable shape. This is why the triangle became sacred. It is the first geometry of creation, the first structure that can stand. And this is why 3 appears everywhere. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Mind, body, spirit. Birth, life, death. 3 is the number of harmony. The moment opposites produce something greater than themselves. The third principle does not erase duality. It gives it order. It turns conflict into creation. And once creation appears, it needs a place to stand. That brings us to 4. The number 4 is the Tetrad. This is the number of the material world, structure, stability, and foundation. Its shape is the square, the cross, the 4 corners of the world, the 4 directions, the 4 seasons, the 4 classical elements. 4 is where spirit takes form, where the invisible becomes measurable, where the idea becomes structure. This is why the square is so important in sacred architecture. The square gives order to space. It creates foundation. It marks the physical world. And this matters for the pyramids, because the Great Pyramid rises from a square base, a 4-sided foundation pointing to the 4 directions: earth below, heaven above, a material platform reaching toward the divine. The number 4 is not just geometry, it is embodiment, the sacred entering the physical world. Now something important happens. If 3 represents the spiritual principle, and 4 represents the material world, then 3 plus 4 gives us 7, the Heptad. 7 is the bridge between matter and spirit, the number where the physical and the spiritual worlds meet. This is why 7 appears again and again across sacred systems. 7 days of creation, the 7 visible planets in ancient astrology, the 7 days of the week, 7 tones in the musical scale, 7 colors in the rainbow, 7 chakras. 7 is not random. It is the number of initiation, the movement from the lower to the higher, from physical existence to spiritual understanding, from survival to meaning. In episode 6, we saw the serpent rising through the 7 centers of the human body. In Genesis, we saw creation unfold through 7 days. And later, we will return to 7 again in planets, tones, temples, and mystery systems. Different traditions, but same structure. 6 movements, then the 7th. The change, the completion, the threshold. 7 is not the end of the journey. It is the doorway. The moment matter begins to remember spirit. Then comes the number 10, the Decad. To the Pythagoreans, 10 was considered a perfect number. Why? Because 10 contains the first 4 numbers. It's unity, duality, harmony, and material form, all gathered into one complete structure. This is represented by the Tetractys, a triangle made of 10 points arranged in 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Together, they form a sacred image of reality, the unfolding of creation from unity into form. The Tetractys was so important to the Pythagoreans that it became almost like a holy symbol, a diagram of cosmic order, a prayer in geometry, a reminder that all things emerge from the one, descend into multiplicity, and eventually return to unity. This is why 10 represents completion, not an ending, but a full cycle, a return, the many resolving back into the one. But numbers alone were not enough. The ancients wanted to see numbers, to give them bodies, to watch invisible principles take form. This is where geometry begins. Geometry is numbers made visible. A dot becomes a line becomes a triangle becomes a pyramid, a square becomes a cube, a circle becomes a world. This is why sacred geometry mattered. It was not decoration, it was philosophy, it was theology, it was cosmology. It's a way of showing how the universe was built. And among all geometric forms, 5 shapes become especially important. These are known as the Platonic solids. 5 perfectly symmetrical 3-dimensional forms: the Tetrahedron, the cube, the Octahedron, the Icosahedron, the Dodecahedron. To be considered perfectly symmetrical, every face must be the same shape, every edge the same length, and every angle the same. And there are only 5 of them. Only 5. That alone should make us pause. Because when geometry reaches perfect symmetry in 3 dimensions, it gives us exactly 5 forms. And Plato, drawing from older traditions, connected these forms to the elements of reality: earth, fire, air, water, and the heavens, or the ether. The cube has 6 square faces, 8 corners, and 12 edges. It is stable, grounded, and balanced. It can be stacked without any gaps. It gives structure, foundation, and form. That is why the cube was associated with Earth, the physical world, the material reality. The cube is the geometry of foundation. It is the stone, the altar, the temple chamber, the world made measurable. And later in the series, the cube will return in a very different form. Because the cube is not only structure, it can also be confinement. Order can become a prison. Foundation can become control. The symbol depends on the consciousness that uses it. But in its purest form, the cube is the earth, the stable base of creation. The tetrahedron has 4 triangular faces, 4 corners, and 6 edges. It is the simplest of the Platonic solids. It's sharp, pointed, and dynamic. It directs energy outward. That is why it is associated with fire. Fire transforms, it burns, it purifies, it destroys, it illuminates. It turns one state into another. The tetrahedron is the geometry of transformation. And this matters because the pyramid itself echoes this form: a base, a point, a rising of force, earth below, fire ascending. The pyramid is not exactly a tetrahedron in ordinary geometry, but symbolically, it belongs to the same family of ascent, a shape that pulls the eye upward, a monument of transformation. The octahedron has 8 triangular faces, 6 corners, and 12 edges. It looks like 2 pyramids joined at the base, one pointing upward and one pointing downward. As above, so below. This is why it was associated with air, with breath, mind, movement, balance, and the unseen forces that pass through everything. Air is invisible, but without it, life disappears. Thought is invisible, but it shapes the world. The octahedron becomes a symbol of balance between directions, above and below, inhale and exhale, matter and spirit. It is the geometry of breath, the structure of flow. The icosahedron has 20 triangular faces, 12 corners, and 30 edges. It is the most fluid of the Platonic solids, almost spherical, full of movement and adaptable. That is why it is associated with water. Water takes the shape of its container. It flows, it reflects, it nourishes, and it dissolves. It can heal, it can overwhelm. It is emotion, intuition, the subconscious. Throughout the series, water has appeared again and again. Eden's river, the flood, the sea that swallowed Atlantis, the water bearer of Aquarius. Water is never just water. It is memory, life, depth, and sometimes judgment. The icosahedron gives that mystery form. Then comes the most mysterious of the 5, the Dodecahedron. 12 pentagonal faces, 20 corners, and 30 edges. In Plato's Timaeus, the dodecahedron is connected not to one ordinary element, but to the universe as a whole, the heavens, the cosmic order. Later traditions associate it with the ether, or spirit, the hidden medium, the unseen field behind physical reality. And notice the number: 12 faces, 12 signs of the zodiac, 12 months, 12 tribes, 12 disciples, and 12 gates. The dodecahedron feels like the universe in miniature form, the geometry of the whole, the shape of the hidden order surrounding the visible world. And this connects directly to what we discussed in episode 6, the ether, the unseen field, the idea that what appears empty may not be empty at all. The dodecahedron becomes the symbol of that mystery, not the world we can hold, but the order that holds the world. And around all of this stands the circle, the oldest and most universal of sacred forms. No beginning, no end, a perfect return. The circle is the shape of cycles, the sun, the moon, the horizon, the great year. The circle represents wholeness, completion, and eternity. Every point on its edge is the same distance from the center. That is harmony, balance, and equality around a hidden point. The circle contains the world. It contains the cross. It contains the zodiac. It contains the clock. And the Platonic solids can be imagined inside it, held within its boundary like creation inside eternity. The circle is not merely a shape. It is a container of all shapes, the infinite holding the finite. the divine surrounding form. Now that we have walked through the sacred numbers, the 5 solids, and the circle, we can return to one of the strangest patterns in this whole system, the number 9. In many traditions, 9 represents completion before rebirth, the final stage before the return to 10, the last step before a new cycle begins. Human life itself is shaped by 9 months in the womb, a hidden formation before birth. So symbolically, 9 becomes the number of completion, gestation, initiation, and the final chamber before transformation. And mathematically, 9 has a strange quality. When you multiply by 9 and reduce the digits, the number returns to itself. 9 times 2 is 18. 1 plus 8 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. 2 plus 7 is 9. Again and again, 9 returns. It collapses back into itself. Now, we need to be clear. This is not modern physics. This is symbolic mathematics. It's numerology, digit reduction, a way of reading numbers as meaning. But in the ancient worldview, that mattered, because number was not only quantity, it was quality. And through that lens, 9 begins to appear like a signature. Look at timekeeping. A full day has 24 hours. 2 plus 4 reduces to 6. But when broken into minutes, one day contains 1,440 minutes. 1 plus 4 plus 4 equals 9. A day also contains 86,400 seconds. 8 plus 6 plus 4 equals 18. 1 plus 8 equals 9. Half a day contains 43,200 seconds. 4 plus 3 plus 2 equals 9. These are human systems of measurement, yes, but that is exactly the point. The ancient keepers of time did not choose numbers randomly. They worked with cycles, circles, divisions, harmonic patterns. Then look at geometry. A circle has 360 degrees. 3 plus 6 equals 9. A triangle contains 180 degrees. 1 plus 8 equals 9. A square contains 360 degrees. Again, 9. A pentagon contains 540 degrees. 5 plus 4 equals 9. And when we move into the Platonic solids, the pattern continues. The Tetrahedron contains 720 degrees across its faces. 7 plus 2 equals 9. The cube contains 2,160 degrees. 2 plus 1 plus 6 equals 9. The octahedron contains 1,440 degrees. 1 plus 4 plus 4 equals 9. The icosahedron contains 3,600 degrees. 3 plus 6 equals 9. The dodecahedron contains 6,480 degrees. 6 plus 4 plus 8 equals 18. 1 plus 8 equals 9. Again and again, when sacred geometry is translated into angular measure, the pattern returns. 9. Not as proof by itself, but as a rhythm, a symbolic fingerprint, a reoccurring echo inside the language of form. Now bring this back to episode 7, the Great Year. In the traditional esoteric model, one full great year is 25,920 years. 2 plus 5 plus 9 plus 2 equals 18. 1 plus 8 equals 9. One zodiac age is 2,160 years. 2 plus 1 plus 6 equals 9. The movement of 1 degree across the precessional cycle is 72 years. 7 plus 2 equals 9. A quarter of the great year, a great season, is 6,480 years. 6 plus 4 plus 8 equals 18. Again, 9. Then look back at the Hindu Yuga numbers we discussed earlier. The Satya Yuga is 1,728,000 years. 1 plus 7 plus 2 plus 8 equals 18. 1 plus 8 equals 9. The Treta Yuga is 1,296,000 years. 1 plus 2 plus 9 plus 6 equals 18. Again, 9. The Dvapara Yuga is 864,000 years. 8 plus 6 plus 4 equals 18. Again, 9. Kali Yuga, 432,000 years. 4 plus 3 plus 2 equals 9. The full Maha Yuga is 4,320,000 years. 4 plus 3 plus 2 equals 9. We also see the pattern in the Mayan long count calendar. The 13 Baktum cycle lasts 1,872,000 days. 1 plus 8 plus 7 plus 2 equals 18. Again, 9. Now, a skeptic might say, this is just numerology. And in one sense, yes, it is numerology. But the third narrative asks a different question. Why did so many sacred systems preserve numbers that reduce into the same family? Why do 432, 864, 2,160, 4,320, 6,480, and 25,920 keep appearing in time cycles, cosmic measurements, sacred calendars, and esoteric traditions? Maybe some of it is coincidence. Maybe some of it is rounding. Maybe some of it is inherited convention. But maybe that is exactly how sacred knowledge survives. Not as a textbook, but as a pattern, as a number, as a rhythm, as a code hidden in plain sight. Now look at the two lights that shaped nearly every ancient religion, the sun and the moon. The sun's radius is often rounded to about 432,000 miles. 4 plus 3 plus 2 equals 9. Its diameter is often rounded to about 864,000 miles. 8 plus 6 plus 4 equals 18. Again, 9. The moon's radius is about 1,080 miles. 1 plus 8 equals 9. Its diameter is about 2,160 miles. 2 plus 1 plus 6 equals 9. Again, these are rounded values. We should not pretend they are exact sacred measurements handed to us by a modern laboratory. But symbolically, they matter, because 432, 864, 108, and 2,160 are not random to the ancient mind. The sun and the moon, the two great lights of the sky, fall into the same numerical family that appears in sacred time. Maybe the ancients noticed this. Maybe they encoded it. And maybe later systems preserved it without fully remembering why. But the pattern is there. And once you see it, the ancient world begins to look less like superstition and more like a symbolic science. Not science in the modern sense, but a way of reading harmony, numbers, proportion, time, and light. So why go through all of this? Why spend an entire episode on numbers, shapes, and ancient math? Because this is the foundation. You cannot understand what the ancients built unless you understand how they thought. You cannot decode the message unless you know the language it was written in. And that language was number. To the ancient mind, numbers were not cold. They were alive. Every ratio reflected a relationship. Every angle revealed a principle. Every shape embodied an idea. Every cycle carried a meaning. They saw the universe as a living system of order and harmony, a cosmic instrument tuned by divine proportion. And this is where Pythagoras becomes the bridge, because through the Pythagorean tradition, we can still glimpse the older worldview, the idea that music, mathematics, geometry, astronomy, ethics, and the soul were not separate subjects. They were one science, the science of harmony. Pythagoras did not simply teach people to calculate. He taught them to see reality as ordered, structured, proportioned, and alive. And if Manly P. Hall is right that the mystery traditions of Egypt preserved fragments of Atlantean wisdom, then Pythagoras becomes part of a larger transmission. Atlantis to Egypt, Egypt to Pythagoras, Pythagoras to the West. A current of knowledge carried through number, music, symbol, and form. That is why this episode matters. Because what we are really uncovering here is not just math, it is a worldview, a way of seeing the universe not as chaos, but as design, a living matrix of number, vibration, consciousness, and form. And once you see that, history stops being a list of disconnected civilizations. It becomes a single transmission, a single stream of knowledge moving through the ruins, the stars, the temples, the mystery schools, the myths, the monuments. This is what the third narrative is really about. Not only proving that advanced civilizations once existed, but remembering the way they saw the world and reclaiming that sight for ourselves. Because when you begin to see the world through their eyes, the pattern comes closer. Your breath, your heartbeat, your body, your relationships, the spiral of a shell, the orbit of a planet, the proportions of a pyramid, the rhythm of a song. You begin to realize that you are not separate from the code. You are a part of it. You are geometry. You are frequency. You are proportion. You are a living expression of the same order woven through creation. The ancients were not building monuments merely to honor the gods. They were building monuments to the mathematics of God. They understood that creation speaks through form, that harmony is not a metaphor, that numbers can reveal the hidden architecture beneath matter and mind. And if that is true, then the Great Pyramid may not just be a tomb. It may be a message, a stone expression of the same language we have just learned. Numbers, proportion, geometry, alignment, harmony, and light. So in the next episode, we return to Egypt. We stand before the pyramid, not as a tourist, not as a student reciting the second narrative, but as readers approaching a text, a code written in stone. And we will ask, who really built it? What knowledge were they trying to preserve? And if the pyramid is a message, what have we forgotten how to read? I'll see you in the next episode.